Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Whatever Happened To, the series where we take a where are they now look at players who found success in the National Hockey League but are no longer permanent fixtures in the league, either due to controversy, poor play, or just rotten luck. In today's episode, we are going to be taking a look at a 10-year veteran of the league, as we ask, whatever happened to David Booth? After being selected 53rd overall in the second round of the 2004 NHL entry draft by the Florida Panthers, David Booth remained at Michigan State University for the next 2 seasons, where he put up 51 points in 65 games. This production helped lead Michigan to the Mason Cup, as they were crowned the 2006 CCHA playoff champions in Booth's final year with the team. Having spent the past 4 years at university and having become a key player and top point producer for the team, Booth eyed the NHL as he turned pro. Thanks to his strong play in the following months, he wouldn't have to wait very long to achieve his goal. The 06-07 season saw Booth start the year with the Rochester Americans, Florida's AHL affiliate at the time, and start his professional hockey career off well, as he scored 7 goals and 7 assists for 14 points in 25 AHL games. This play was good enough to get Booth called up to the Florida Panthers roster midway through the season. Less than a year after he left college, Booth was getting the chance to suit up in the National Hockey League for the first time. Booth suited up for 48 games with the Panthers during the 06-07 NHL season, scoring 3 goals and 7 assists for 10 points in that span. Whilst Florida would miss out on the playoffs, Booth would be sent back down to Rochester to help them in their AHL playoff run. Booth scored 2 points in 6 games for Rochester, as the Americans were eliminated in the first round of the playoffs by the Hamilton Bulldogs. Having experienced his first taste of NHL hockey, Booth was ready to kick his play up a notch and make the league his permanent home for the foreseeable future. The 07-08 season saw Booth make the Panthers roster out of training camp and improve on his previous season numbers, as he potted 22 goals and 18 assists for 40 points in 73 games during his first full season in the league. Whilst Booth would improve his numbers greatly and become a key player for Florida, the Panthers missed out on the postseason for the 7th straight year. Having found his footing in the NHL, Booth was ready to take his game to the next level. And boy, he didn't disappoint in the following season. The 08-09 NHL season saw Booth take that next step in his career and explode on the scoresheet, as he scored an impressive 31 goals and 29 assists for 60 points in 72 games. These numbers would be the best single-season point production of Booth's entire NHL career. Whilst Booth would have a career year with the Panthers in just his second full season in the NHL, Florida weren't able to make it to the playoffs as they missed out on the postseason for the 10th time in 11 seasons. After his entry-level contract with the team had ended, and having become a key point producer for the Panthers, Florida decided that they wanted to go all in on their rising star and keep him in Florida for the foreseeable future. So, on July 1st, 2009, they signed Booth to a 6-year, $25.5 million contract worth an average annual value of $4.25 million a season. 5 years after he was drafted, this American winger had just earned his first multi-million-dollar contract. Little did he know that his best hockey was already behind him. The 09-10 NHL season saw the newly contracted Booth take to the ice with Florida once again. However, during the first month of the season, Booth was the victim of a shoulder to the head by Philadelphia Flyers captain Mike Richards, which rendered the former second-round pick unconscious. Booth was taken off the ice on a stretcher and was taken to a hospital in Philadelphia, where he was found to have a concussion as well as a cut above his eye that required stitches. This incident was the first in a long line of injuries that plagued the remainder of Booth's NHL career, and it became highly controversial due to Richards not being suspended for the hit, though he was given a game misconduct in that match. The subsequent meetings between these two teams for the remainder of the season resulted in their fair share of fights in retaliation for what the Flyers captain had done, including Booth and Richards throwing down on March 3rd, 2010, a night where David Booth recorded a Gordie Howe hat-trick. This event is now seen as one of the driving forces towards the NHL focusing on eliminating headshots and blindside hits, particularly towards players who cannot see the hitter when they are approaching. So at least something good came out of something so horrible. Booth missed over half of the season due to the injury suffered in that game and finished the year with 8 goals and 8 assists for 16 points in 28 games. Then, in a cruel twist of fate, Booth missed the final 9 games of the season due to another concussion delivered via a hit to the head by Montreal Canadiens defenseman Jaroslav Spacek. Jeez, talk about bad luck. Whilst Booth's first season on his new contract would be a roller coaster ride to say the least, the Panthers would miss out on the playoffs yet again as they finished near the bottom of the NHL standings. Though there were several question marks as to whether David Booth would be ready to play at the start of the following season after suffering 2 concussions in 1 year, the 10-11 NHL season saw Booth return to the Panthers lineup and play the entire 82 games with the team, as he potted 23 goals and 17 assists for 40 points. This improved production compared to the first year of his big contract didn't do much to help the Panthers' playoff hopes though, as they missed the postseason yet again. With it being so long since the Panthers had made the playoffs, Florida general manager Dave Talon began shipping veteran players off for draft picks and prospects to reset his franchise and get it back to its winning ways. Unfortunately for Booth, he would be one of the players on the move in the coming months. The 11-12 NHL season saw Booth suit up for the Sunbelt franchise and begin the year with Florida once more. However, after scoring only a single goal in the first 6 games of the season, it was announced that David Booth had been traded, along with Steven Reinprecht and a 2013 third-round pick, to the Vancouver Canucks, in exchange for Michael Samuelsson and Marco Sturm. After spending the last half a decade in Florida, Booth was moving across the border to suit up for a Western Canadian franchise fresh off a Stanley Cup Finals loss. Unfortunately for him, his time with the Canucks wouldn't be his finest hour. Booth finished the season with Vancouver, putting up 16 goals and 13 assists for 29 points in 56 games, but not before missing 18 games due to an MCL injury caused by a knee-on-knee hit from Colorado Avalanche forward Kevin Porter. Jeez, Booth just can't catch a break from the injury bug, can he? This production helped Vancouver make the playoffs, where Booth notched a single assist in 5 playoff games during his first trip to the NHL playoffs, but the Vancouver Canucks were eliminated in the first round by the Los Angeles Kings. The 12-13 NHL season began in a lockout, but rather than do what most NHL players did at the time and play overseas, David Booth seemingly chose to stay in North America and wait until the NHL season began. I don't really blame him, to be honest. The amount of injuries he suffered at this point, he should take whatever rest he can get. Once the lockout ended and the NHL season began, Booth would continue to struggle with injuries and his point production throughout the season, as he scored a goal and 2 assists for 3 points in just 12 games. Whilst Vancouver would make the playoffs, Booth wouldn't play a single playoff game that year, as the Canucks were swept in the first round by the San Jose Sharks. The 13-14 NHL season saw Booth have somewhat improved health, as he suited up for 66 games for the Canucks, the most in one season during his time in Vancouver. However, his point production wouldn't follow suit, as he only scored 9 goals and 10 assists for 19 points in that span, as his ice time continued to diminish compared to his ice time in Florida. This drop in production didn't help Vancouver's playoff hopes, as the Canucks missed out on the playoffs for the first time in 6 seasons. Things had gone from bad to worse for Booth during his time in Vancouver, but it would all be over soon. Just not in the way Booth would have liked. After the 13-14 season ended, Vancouver decided that they wished to move on from Booth and his $4 million a season contract, as the former second-round pick had failed to live up to the expectations placed upon him by the Canucks management. So, on June 17, 2014, the Canucks placed Booth on unconditional waivers and bought out the final year of his contract with the team. After joining the Canadian franchise 2.5 seasons ago, Booth was becoming an unrestricted free agent for the first time in his career. Booth remained as a UFA until July 22, 2014, when he signed a one-year, $1.1 million contract with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Booth was moving to an Original Six franchise north of the border in the hopes of finally getting healthy and in turn getting his career back on track. But the hockey gods had other plans. The 14-15 NHL season saw Booth put on the white maple leaf and take to the ice for Toronto for the first time. However, Booth's time with the Original Six franchise would get off to an unfortunate start, as he broke his toe towards the end of pre-season. This injury put Booth on the injured reserve for the first 2 months of the regular season. God, these injuries just never end, do they? Once he recovered, Booth produced similar numbers to his season prior, as he scored 7 goals and 6 assists for 13 points in 59 games. These numbers were unable to help Toronto make the playoffs, as they missed out on the postseason for the second straight year. After his contract with the Leafs had expired, Toronto weren't that interested in re-signing the injury-prone Booth to another contract. This sentiment was felt by many other NHL teams around the league, as Booth remained an unrestricted free agent for most of the 2015 offseason. That is, until September 9th, 2015, when he signed a PTO contract with the Florida Panthers, the team that drafted him 11 years ago. Having suited up for 3 different NHL teams in the past 4 seasons, Booth's career had come full circle, as the former second-round pick looked to fight off the injury bug and finally return to his previous career heights. However, things wouldn't turn out so well in Florida the second time around. Whilst Booth would return to the Florida Panthers, his stay would be short-lived, as he was released from his PTO contract at the conclusion of Florida's 2015 training camp. Rather than wait and see if another NHL team would give him a chance, Booth decided to take his talents overseas for the first time in his career, as he signed with Admiral Vladivostok of the KHL. After starting his professional hockey career a decade ago, David Booth was moving to the other side of the world to try his hand in the top hockey league in Russia. Booth spent the remainder of the 15-16 season with Admiral and put up decent numbers during his time with the team, as he scored 6 goals and 10 assists for 16 points in 23 games. This production was good enough to help Admiral clinch a berth in the 2016 Gagarin Cup playoffs, where Booth went scoreless in 5 games, as Vladivostok was eliminated in the first round by Sibir. After his contract with Admiral had expired, Booth felt that he was ready to return to North America and take another crack at playing in the National Hockey League. So, on September 20th, 2016, he signed a PTO contract with the Anaheim Ducks. However, his stint with the team wouldn't last long, as he was released from the team's roster before the conclusion of the preseason. After being released from his second PTO contract in 2 seasons, Booth decided to return to the KHL as he signed a contract with Avangard Omsk on November 17th, 2016. Booth played the remainder of the 16-17 season with Avangard and saw a slight decline in his production compared to the year prior, as he only potted 4 goals and 4 assists for 8 points in 19 games. These numbers did help Avangard make the playoffs, where Booth scored 2 goals in 12 games, but Omsk were eliminated in the second round of the 2017 Gagarin Cup playoffs by AK Bars Kazan. After his second stint in Russia had come to a close, Booth had decided he had played enough hockey in the KHL and once again eyed a return to the National Hockey League. So, on August 30th, 2017, he signed a PTO contract with the Detroit Red Wings. Booth's fortunes would be favoured this time around, as his hard work and perseverance impressed the Red Wings coaching staff, prompting management to sign him to a 1-year, 2-way contract worth $700,000 on October 2nd, 2017. After 2 seasons playing in Russia, the 33-year-old Booth was getting the chance to reignite his NHL career and make a better name for himself around the league as he entered his twilight years. However, Booth's time in the NHL wouldn't last as long as he might have hoped. The 17-18 NHL season saw Booth suit up for the Red Wings for the first time and have a pretty forgettable season with the team. Booth was used somewhat sparingly, almost as a 13th forward by Detroit, which meant that Booth saw limited ice time throughout the season. This, of course, affected his point production, which saw him score only 4 goals and 1 assist for 5 points in 28 games. This lack of production seemed to reflect Detroit's playoff hopes, as the Red Wings missed out on the postseason for the 2nd straight year. Having seen his point production almost grind to a halt in the past few seasons, and having seen limited ice time in Detroit, Booth once again found little interest from NHL teams. This prompted rumours as to whether Booth would announce his retirement from professional hockey, since he had posted on his Twitter that he was done playing hockey. However, on December 5th, 2018, it was announced that Booth had returned to the KHL once again as he signed with Dynamo Minsk for the remainder of the 18-19 season. This news came despite Booth expressing his disinterest in returning to the Russian league in an article written by Sportsnet the year prior. To this day, David Booth is a member of the Dynamo Minsk organisation. At the time of this recording, Booth has scored a goal and an assist for 2 points in 13 games with the team, so his numbers continue to be consistent with his previous KHL totals, if not slightly down. With his lack of point production over the last few seasons, it's unlikely that the 34-year-old Booth will be playing professional hockey for many years after this season ends. But give credit where credit is due. Booth always finds a way to suit up for a professional hockey team, whether it's in the NHL or the KHL, 2 leagues that are regarded as some of the best leagues in the world. But regardless of where he is playing now, and if this is or isn't his last season as a professional hockey player, there is no doubt that David Booth made an impact on the National Hockey League. In 530 NHL games, Booth scored 124 goals and 112 assists for 236 points, as well as scoring 1 point in 5 playoff games. Considering he suffered 2 concussions in 1 season, a broken foot, and an MCL injury all in the space of 5 years, I think it's safe to say that Booth did the best he could in the state that his body was in. And besides, there are plenty of second-round picks that have had worse careers than David Booth has had, that's for sure. And there you go. That's what happened to David Booth. What do you think about Booth's career? Is it good, bad, or do you think he would have taken his game to the next level if it weren't for all of his injuries? Also, is there another player that you would like me to look at as part of this series? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear what you guys think. But thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you have enjoyed. Please feel free to like, subscribe, share, or watch some of my other videos. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye. A big thank you to Chris Gadsby, Max Artis, Nat Marlowe, and Kalesbro for helping support this video via Patreon. If you too want to help support the channel a little bit further and get a shout out at the end of every future video, make sure you head over to patreon.com/oddmanrush and become a patron today.